In cybersecurity, we're obsessed with finding bugs in the code. But what if I told you the biggest, most dangerous bugs aren't in the software at all? They're actually in our brains. Yeah, these are the thinking traps that can get even the smartest pros. And that's what we're digging into today in this explainer. So let me ask you a question right off the bat. What do you think is the biggest vulnerability in cybersecurity? Seriously, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it, I don't know, servers that haven't been patched? Some crazy zero-day exploit? Maybe those super sophisticated state-sponsored hackers we're always hearing about? Well, the answer might actually surprise you. It's none of those things. The biggest vulnerability, it's not in our software. It's in our wetware. And by wetware, I mean that squishy 3-pound supercomputer between your ears, the human brain. Incredibly powerful for sure, but also kind of buggy. All right, let's get into it. We're going to explore our brain's biggest bugs. Think of them as these shortcuts, these little arrows in reasoning that all of us fall for. And when we do, they can lead to some really, really bad security failures.
So, the fancy term for these brain bugs is a logical fallacy. It's basically just an error in reasoning. See, our brains developed these mental shortcuts like ages ago to help us make sense of a really complicated world really quickly. Super useful back then. But today, in the crazy, hyper-complex world of cybersecurity, yeah, those same shortcuts can lead us right into a trap.
First up, let's talk about one of the most common bugs out there, seeing false patterns. This is our brain's tendency to connect the dots even when there are no real dots to connect. Okay, check this out. Look at these login logs. You see a bunch of failed logins, one after another, bang, 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 all from the same IP. And then, a few seconds later, boom, a success. So what's your gut telling you? What just happened here?
And here's where it gets interesting. There are at least two totally plausible stories for what you just saw. I bet your first thought was brute force attack, right? A classic password guessing attempt. And you know what? It absolutely could be. But it could also just be someone who forgot their caps lock was on, got super frustrated, and then finally figured it out. The raw data itself doesn't tell us which story is true.
This is a perfect example of what's called the false cause fallacy. It's our brain's tendency to assume that just because one thing happened right after another, the first thing must have caused the second. And here's the key takeaway, the thing you need to tattoo on your brain. Correlation does not equal causation. Say it with me. And listen, this is not a new problem. This bug has been in our operating system for a long time. Let's go way back to 249 BC. There's this Roman consul, right? He's about to go into a huge naval battle. Before they fight, they consult the sacred chickens for a good omen. The problem? The chickens, they won't eat. A very bad sign. So what does he do? He gets furious and chucks them overboard, yelling, "If they won't eat, let them drink." Well, he lost the battle, big time. And guess what got the blame? Yep, the chickens. Classic false cause. Okay, let's move on to the next major thinking trap. This one is super dangerous because it gives us a false sense of security. I call it the evidence trap. I mean, how many times have you heard this? Or, be honest, even thought it yourself? You look at your dashboards, everything's green, no alerts are popping off. So, everything's good, right? Whew, we're safe. Well, this is the absence of evidence fallacy in action. It's this belief that if we don't see any evidence of a problem, then there must not be a problem. But think about it. Our security tools could be misconfigured, or maybe they're just broken. Or even scarier, what if the attacker is using a brand new technique that our tools don't even know how to look for? Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. A lack of evidence is not proof of absence. Let me give you a classic example of this. For literally centuries, everyone in Europe just knew that all swans were white. It was just a fact of life. Every swan anyone had ever seen or heard of or read about was white. It was settled. And then explorers got to Australia, and Australia was basically like, hold my beer, because there they found swans that were black. And just like that, a fact that had been true for thousands of years was completely shattered. And that, of course, is where we get the term black swan event. It's an event that comes completely out of left field, something so far outside our normal experience that we couldn't even imagine it was possible, right up until the moment it happens. So what does this mean for cybersecurity? It means we can't just protect ourselves from the attacks we already know about. We have to build systems that are tough enough to handle the complete unknowns, the stuff we haven't even dreamed up yet. All right, our third and final category of brain bugs is all about our love of easy answers. We are hardwired to look for simple solutions, even when we're facing incredibly complex problems. And this pops up in a few common ways. You've got the magic bullet fallacy, the idea that one new tool is going to solve all our problems. Then there's hasty generalization, which is where we jump to blame the user, calling them the weakest link without looking at the whole picture. And finally, there's the ad hominem fallacy, which, well, this one can get pretty ugly.
So ad hominem literally means to the person. It's what happens when we attack the person delivering a message instead of the message itself. And let's be real, when it feels like threats are coming from everywhere, it's a really tempting shortcut to just focus on the source of the warning, not the warning itself. Look, here's the bottom line. If an employee, even one you don't particularly respect, sends you a warning about a system breach, that warning is still a warning. You have to check it out. And if the most brilliant security engineer you've ever interviewed walks in with a giant mohawk, they are still a brilliant security engineer. Judging the person instead of the facts, it's just lazy. And in our field, it's incredibly dangerous.
Okay, so we've talked about all these bugs that are baked into our thinking. We've seen how our own minds can trip us up. The big question is, what do we do about it? How do we actually learn to think smarter?
It all boils down to one simple truth. Strong cybersecurity requires strong thinking. We spend all this time and money updating our technical software, right? But maybe it's time we started thinking about upgrading our mental software. And the best way to do that is to become a fallacy hunter. It starts with questioning your own first assumptions. Don't just accept your gut reaction. Look for multiple causes, not just the easy one. And please remember, correlation is not causation. Never forget that a lack of alerts doesn't mean you're safe. And finally, always evaluate the message, not the messenger.
So I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about. As you go through your week, pay attention to the little shortcuts your brain takes. And ask yourself, which of these thinking traps, which one is the most dangerous in your world?